My name is Judy Showalter, and today is June 3rd. I'm here with Reverend Alfred Lee Eastman for the Living Legacies Oral History Project at Randolph-Macon College. Mr. Eastman is a member of the class of 1958, and after Randolph-Macon, he went on to a career in the Methodist ministry. Thank you for coming in today, Mr. Eastman. Can you tell me how you heard about Randolph-Macon College?
Well, I began when I was in the Methodist, when I was a layman in the church at Grace Methodist Church. Pernell Bailey was a pastor at that time, and I decided to go into the ministry, and so I was told to go to see him first. So he was my pastor, and we went there, and he interviewed me, and agreed that he thought that I might make a pastor in time. And he informed me then that I was going to have to take a college degree, although I'd already graduated from the apprentice school in the Newport shipyard and had a degree there, which was not mechanical engineering, but working in the yard itself. So I kind of came up here he recommended Randolph-Macon as a start. He said he'd probably have to go to seminary too, but he recommended Randolph-Macon because he was a graduate here too. And basically that's where I heard where I was going to go. I really didn't have a whole lot of choice, according to him.
Can you tell us about your first trip to the campus and your impressions of the school?
Yeah, I came here, as I was telling you just a while ago, I had a house with a wife and a child. And so when I moved up here, we moved up in our furniture. We moved with the furniture. And when we got here, we moved in the apartments who were over by the Baptist church. We had rented apartments over there, assuming that later on we were going to have to go someplace else, but we wanted to get started there. And so when I got here, the man said I needed to give him $100. Well, I didn't have $100. I had a check, and he wouldn't take the check, so I didn't know what to do. But in the meantime, I had already been up here to talk to Gwillette Simpson, who was the admission officer at that time, I think. And I went in and I told him what I wanted to do, and we chatted a little while. He said, fine, you can come to Randolph-Macon. Nowadays, that would be unheard of. Because you've got to go through tests, this, that, the other. You've got to have your SATs and SATs and all of these things. But I was impressed by Gwillette because he was a very friendly man. And in regards to when we moved here, I called him on the telephone and said I was in big trouble. And he came over and he told the guy, he said, the college will guarantee the check. Take the check. And so that was my first introduction to the administration, other than when I was accepted to come into the college. And I didn't examine too much of the college itself. I was so excited about coming here, and it was in the summertime when I came up in July to be accepted, and so I just wondered what in the world was going to happen. Most of the buildings were quite old looking to me at that time, and very impressive. Some of the new ones were being in operation then. I think Fox Hall impressed me. And we went up to Mary. It was a Mary Branch place where the fellows lived, dormitories. That was in pretty good shape. But some of the things were a little bit old looking to me. And we looked around and decided we would come on and get here, because it wasn't going to take a whole lot of money to get in. Like I said, $125 tuition I had to pay up front, and I already paid the rental with the other place. So I'll give you a little aside here. My wife wasn't very excited about this whole thing. She was really upset. She was not only upset because I had a good job at NASA. I was making good money. And we had just bought a brand new house, and we had a brand new son, Philip, who was 9 months old. when I decided to go into the ministry and go to college. Well, things were kind of tight there for a while. When we got to the new apartment, never will forget it, we went in. I had my mother-in-law with me, which wasn't my idea, but she came anyway. And we walked in, and Philip got fleas on his legs, and boy, she went berserk. She wanted immediately us to move out of that place right now. And so I said, well, we can get rid of the fleas. But we lived there for a year, and then we were running out of money, and we had to move there. I enjoyed the first year that I was here. I don't know whether this is off the record or not, but the teachers or the professors were extremely friendly. And my anticipation of the college was different from my anticipation when I was wondering just how was I going to deal with this. I graduated from Newport News High School, which had a college course, college trained course, so I had taken that, but I had a C average. I couldn't have gotten into Randolph-Macon under any circumstances with that C. And when I got here, I found that the professors were very, very agreeable, fine gentlemen. Mr. McDonald, Professor McDonald, told me one time, I was in his English class, and sometimes he could get very sarcastic with the black fellows. Some of the fellows had a hard time reading. And he told me one day, he said, Mr. Eastman, do me a favor. And I said, yes, sir, what you want? He said, read this. Nobody else could read it. He called me in one day after I wrote a little blurb on what happened to me when I was over in World War II when the cooks got into trouble, they dove off the side of the ship and swam to the beach, skipping liberty. And I told the story of how they got court-martialed and all that kind of stuff. And I wrote the thing up, and he asked me to read it to the boys. He said, that was a good thing. So he called me in one day after that. He said, you know, there's one thing I just do not understand about you. He said, you can write well, but he says you don't know grammar. And he said, I can't figure that out. He said, you use it right, but you can't define it. So I thought, oh, I'm going to be out of here at the end of this semester. He said, I'll tell you what I want you to do. He said, I'm going to let you grade papers. When we have a grammar test, I want you to grade the papers. And I think that'll help you. And so he got me through that permit. And I thought, this is a great guy. And then Professor Pannell, he was very religious and strong support of the team. And old Dr. Haley, he had a hard time with 20 boys, and Dr. Haley couldn't see. I think he was totally blind. But some of the guys, one of the guys played a trick on him one time. He would line us all up, and so he'd know where we were, memorize where we were, so he could call on us. And that's the way he did it. One of the boys one time put a broom with a coat on it and just destroyed his memory completely. And then when he got upset, the young fellow apologized and apologized and apologized for what he did. But everybody at that time thought it was kind of funny. When I was in one class, I was sitting there, and I was, like I said, I was probably the oldest kid in this college. I was sitting in one class, and this boy behind me, he was a Korean veteran, and he said, "Hey, Eastman, did you get your check this month?" I said, "No, my check ran out." He said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I was World War II veteran. I wasn't a Korean veteran." He said, "My God, you're an old man." But my impression of the school was great, really. I don't know if that was the first time. I'm giving you more than the first time. And I really enjoyed the whole 3.5 years that I was here. Dorothy got a job over at the main building, working with the communications fellow, and she was doing real well. And I took care of Philip while she was working, and studied, so forth. And while I was studying, I decided I needed to learn how to type, so I got the big book out. And while Philip was sleeping, I learned how to type, touch feeling. And that was an interesting thing. And then the biggest thing that happened to her was my wife told me one day, she said, we were living in Veterans Village then. We had moved over there because I was paying $18 a month, $3 for heat and whatever. And she said, I feel so bad, I just feel sick in my stomach. And being stupid, I just said, well, go to the doctor. It's probably just a cold. She said, yeah, I think maybe I've got flu. And Brenda was born 9 months later. So I had a wife and 2 children. Veterans Village was a great experience. It really was. I don't know whether y'all ever remember the Llewellyn boys, do you? They came in '58. One of the Llewellyn boys was quite a character. I had a little dog, and we built a fence around back where you step off into the yard, and we had a little dog, put him out there.
Can you tell us where we have a vague idea of where
it was right down there across from the post on the football field.
Okay.
Right
so where the freshman village
yeah,
is
where the
now?
freshman village is now. And we had a line them going this way and this way on the other side. And they were all full of mostly, not all veterans, there's a number of kids that got in it because it was cheap living, really. But my wife wasn't too happy with that because when we lived in Newport News, they built these types of buildings for the people who came from North Carolina and other places to work, to live in. And they were pretty spare, really. They were really spare in every way. And she wasn't very happy living down there, but I had a couple of guys that I ran around with down there lived there. Joe, I'm slipping. I'm having a dementia moment now. One of the fellows who lived across the hall from us was a quarterback on the football team, and he really liked Philip. And he used to come over there. And say, Al, is it all right if Philip comes out and plays? And I thought, this guy, he was a big fella, and he liked Philip. He and his wife didn't have any children. And so we got a big kick out of that. One time when we were sitting in the living room, not in the living room, we were in the bedroom doing something with Philip and the children, and we heard somebody come in the back door. We had just eaten dinner. And we heard somebody come in the back door. We didn't pay any attention to it because they thought we just had people do that occasionally with us because we were a little older. And so we went back in, and all the food that we had left there was gone. So we figured somebody just came in there and sat down and ate it, which was okay. But we thought it was kind of funny that anybody would do it, but they did it. And so anyway, that was some of the things that happened. We used to be able to sit there and watch the football games from across the way. They didn't have the big fence up there; it was open, and they had the old. I guess they've changed the place where you go to watch the football games now. But it was good living down there. We did have one incident where one of the guys who was on the track team up here found this fella peeking in the windows, and he ran after him, and the guy ran, and they chased him down. The boy chased him down there, and the guy pulled a knife on him, and I asked him, I said, what did you do? He said, I turned around and ran back. So it was kind of, we didn't have any crime or anything like that. Just something like that might have happened, but it was pretty good living down there. I enjoyed it because
I was unaware that there were any children that lived in Vets Village. Were your children unusual, or were there other kids?
No, there was Doug Lawson he had a son that lived with him.
Okay.
And I don't know whether Mrs. Clue lived next door to us. Do y'all remember her? She was Dr. Marlin's secretary. She lived we lived right on the front. We could face the road. We faced the road, and Miss Clue lived next to us. And then the football player, I can't remember, Bob, what was his last name? Anyway, he lived there, and a couple of the guys, there was one guy had a baby next down, the third row, they had a baby while they was there. But I don't think there were many children there, really. We had probably the biggest family. Doug had the one, and that was all. That was all, because most of the guys were kind of young.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were 18, 19 years old that were living there. And some except for the veterans. Henry Suddeth lived there, and he lived at the inn, and some of the other guys that lived there. But we moved from it when I had got the opportunity to go up to New York and preach as a student pastor.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my whole, I don't know, the studying was something that I really enjoyed at Randolph-Macon. I had a time with Greek, and one of the other guys who was pretty good kind of tutored me and helped me out along that line. But then I had, Dr. Webb had the Shakespeare courses, which I took one of that, and Dr. Webb got a big kick out of me too. When we read Romeo and Juliet, I'd had a big fight with my wife about a week before that. and I wrote in my paper, I guess it wasn't too bad that Romeo and Juliet died because they didn't have to live through some of the things you did after you were married. I got an A on that paper.
Did you show it to your wife?
No, I didn't.
I'll bet Dr. Webb didn't show it to Mrs. Webb either.
No, but Dr. Webb he was a wonderful old guy. And Dr. Terry, he was a Bible teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and he was really great. And my history professor, for some reason, his name, Merle Munyon, I had his history project. And so I'd started to write that quarter when I was getting ready to leave to get started. I had most of it on the way. Dorothy had typed all of it up, and I was coming back Christmas to go over it with Dr. Munyon. Well, when I got back, Dr. Munyon said, "Funny thing happened, Mr. Eastman." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I've lost your project." And I said, "What?" I couldn't, he said, "I just cannot find it." And I thought, great Caesar's ghost. I got to get back on this thing. But I had all my cards, all my reference cards. And so we cut short our Christmas vacation because I was preaching and I was going to Drew at the same time. So I went back up to, we went back early for Christmas and I started back on that thing. So anyway, it worked out all right. They gave me an A on the project, so I guess Mr. Munyon just felt like I owed an A, whether it was an A or not. But he was a great old guy. He used to say to us, "Fellas, if I'm 5 minutes late, you can get out of the class. Just leave. You got a break." But he said, if you're 5 minutes late, don't even come in. And then we had an English professor who came over here, and he taught history, and he was very caustic about the fact that the United States didn't get into the war any sooner than they did, because he felt that we let England down. He was very interested, and I think I could see what he was driving at. He gave us 2 term papers and 1 exam, and that was it. That was all you were graded on. and the exam was the big part. And I'm telling you the truth, we sat there and wrote for 3 hours, if you could remember it all. And he was a good teacher, a really good teacher. And I learned a lot from him. And I learned a whole lot from him, from all of the teachers, really. I couldn't have gone into Drew if I hadn't gone to Randolph-Macon. That's all. And the grades that I made here admitted me into Drew. Otherwise, I'd have never made it.
What was your major?
History?
History?
Yeah. The thing that I missed, though, for some reason, is American history. We did European, Asian, the whole bit, and we didn't get into American history for some reason. I don't know why.
While you were a student here, you also did serve as a student pastor.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, like I said, we had 4 churches, Moody Wooten and I, and I was here for a year, and the second year I was here, I worked at the A&P store part-time, and that was up on the main street. And I used to check at the counters and put up stock and all that kind of stuff while I was going here. And then the third year, I was kind of short on money, and I needed some money, and I really needed some training too in preaching because I really wanted it. So I asked Purnell Bailey if he could find a place for us to go. Well, he talked to the district superintendent, and the district superintendent said, yeah, we can work something out. He said, I got another guy that wants a part too, and that was Moody. So we were at one of these conferences up at Blackstone, and Moody and I met. We didn't even know we the 2 people that were going to do the trick. So anyway, we went to that, and we came there. And they sent me out there to preach a Mother's Day sermon. And I preached a Mother's Day sermon. And afterwards, this guy told me, he said, we sure do want to get you to come out here and preach. And I said, thank you, Mother. I thought, this is great. But that wasn't the final thing. The DS had to put us out there. Mm-hmm. But we went out there, and it was good. We traveled. We left school. It didn't bother the schoolwork much, because basically what we had to do was to prepare a sermon. And we were already learning how to write different. We were already learning how to construct things. And of course, sometimes preaching doesn't follow in that path, but it gave you the background for it. And I felt very confident to go out there and preach my first sermon, to tell you the truth, because I was going to this school. And I found that through the school and through the support of the other guys and the support of the professors, I felt a different kind of confidence that I never had before. And we preached out there for a year, and then some of the churches wanted to split up and go on their own. And that really didn't fit with what we were appointed to do. But both of us had a good ministry out there. Both of us did. And so after that, when I graduated and left here, I went to Drew, and I was ready to go, because when I went to Drew, I had a wife and 2 kids, and I needed some support. And the district superintendent had already promised me 4 churches, he said. And then one of them was up in the mountain. Nobody came to it. I had tried to hold 2 services up there, and nobody showed up. So I figured these people up here are not interested. So I just kind of let it drift and took the other 3 churches. And I had a pretty good ministry there. Like I was telling you before, my wife was punching my ego by telling me these people wanted to hear me talk rather than what I said, but that really wasn't true.
I do want to hear about your career after you left, but I have one more Randolph-Macon question, which is, as an older student, what was your relationship with the younger students? Did they resent having older students in? Did they treat you differently?
Not really. It's I don't know. In the classroom, I didn't feel like I was being subjected to anything, because most of them pretty well were 18 years old. I was 30. I didn't expect them to be buddy to any degree. The only buddies that I had was down in the village, really, and the fellow was working with me on my Greek stuff. But I would speak to them and talk to them. That was one of the things about Randolph-Macon Academy. Randolph-Macon was that you spoke to everybody. Hello. I don't care who you saw, you spoke to them. And another thing they had, if you put your books down in the grass, no one would ever touch those books, even if it rained. The Honor Society was so strict that you were not supposed to touch anybody's equipment. Like I said, if it poured down raining, you weren't supposed to pick it up. Of course, it never did happen too much, but the Honor Society was pretty tricky up here, because we had one boy in Mr. McDonald's class that turned in a paper that was copied straight out of the Reader's Digest. And then the fun began. McDonald was sort of a forgiving guy. He let him off, but he punished him. I don't know how he punished him. I didn't ask, but he punished him for doing that. But he could have gotten him kicked out right then and now. That would have been the end of it. And that wasn't but about 6 weeks into the class when he started that. He made us write a 500-word theme every week that we were there. And then we had 2 full things we had to write. What were they called?
Term papers?
Term papers. 2 of those term papers, then the examination. So it wasn't an easy class to be in. And but I liked McDonald. He reminded me of some of the guys I was in service with, really, in some ways. But I don't know, what was the question?
We're just talking about being an older student.
Oh, well, no, I didn't feel out of place. I felt kind of weird wearing that beanie around on my head. We had to wear that beanie until we beat
Hampton
Sydney. Then we could get rid of it. But I really do think I really didn't have to wear the thing. I could have kept it on my head. I don't think anybody would say anything to me one way or the other. But I just kept it on and just show a part of the thing. And some of the things that they had that freshmen were supposed to go to, I said, I'm not going to those things. No one ever said anything, one thing, but I didn't get anybody to say, where were you, or anything. They just assumed that I wasn't going to be there, I guess. But there was no tough relations at all.
And you were a member of Clericus.
Yes.
Can you tell us about Clericus?
Well, it was basically a meeting of 90 guys, supposedly 90 guys that were going into the ministry from Randolph-Macon, which composed almost a third of the school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think you got that many.
Nowhere near.
It was a group. We got together as a group, and of course we went to chapel too. Was it every week? Every week we went to church. We went to chapel, and then we would have people. Billy Graham came and spoke one day, and we had a governor come, and he made a speech. And when we got back, Dr. McDonald said, I want you fellas to do one thing for me. So we thought, so I want you to write down everything you heard in that speech. Then he went on to prove that was what you call a political speech. And, I wish I could remember the governor. I don't remember the governor's name, really. But he did give us a real political speech. I was a little older, and I'd heard a few of them. And it didn't really have a whole lot of point to it, really. It was the usual stuff. But we went to chapel, and we had one time we had a chapel, and the students were making fun of the professors, and they got kind of raunchy, really. And Dr. Panel and Dr. Haley and one other professor got up and walked out. And boy, we heard about that. They gave us the devil about that thing. They didn't give me anything. I mean, they gave those guys the devil about it. And that was, I don't know whether that was the year that we had the book, the annual, the year that we had the annual, that they cut all 14 or 15 pages out of it, showing the guys doing things that they shouldn't have been doing with the girls that they had invited. So they cut every one of those panels out of there. And everybody was in an uproar. They were calling it censorship and all that stuff. But they would take it out. Do you remember that?
We will have to go look at the annuals and see if we have a whole annual.
Well, all they took out of it was the parts where it showed the guys having fun with the girls, drinking and all that kind of stuff, you know. And they took the whole section out. They ripped them all out before they gave them to us.
I have to see if one looks like it has taken
pages,
out.
yeah,
Which would be
Yeah, never noticed that many.
first, well, it would be within those 4 years, so
Yeah.
you can narrow it down right away.
Yeah, we'll go look.
Do you know if there was anything in the student newspaper about it, objecting to it, or did you just not really pay that much attention?
I didn't pay much attention to the paper. I didn't see anything. I didn't see the booklet, really. All I saw, I got the annual. I don't know which one it is. It's like I said, it's narrowed down there. But we had a big uproar there. And Dr. Panel and Dr. Haley and some of the others, I guess Dr. Mullen was in on it too, because they censored that thing and they took it out. I don't know whether it was really bad. Today it would have probably been hysterical. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Today it would have been hysterical, but everybody in Randolph-Macon was supposed to be a pure gentleman then. And if a girl was sitting on his lap or they were hugging each other, that would have been awful then, even though it was pretty liberal then to a great degree. That's a little news piece you didn't hear. I haven't heard.
We learn something every time. So you stayed 3.5 years
Yeah, then I left the last semester.
and went, and did you start
went
that
to-
next semester at Drew? I mean, did you start in the middle of the year?
I left here in January and enrolled at the community college up in northern Virginia, up in near Poughkeepsie. I can't remember. Anyway, I had a good time at that place because I made 4 straight A's in that course. Everything I'd heard it here, one way or the other. And I took an examination one time. It was a 3-hour examination. I did it in an hour and a half and got up and turned it in. And I wondered, I thought maybe I didn't do too well on that thing. You know, I turned it in kind of quick. I met a guy that was at one of the stores in Poughkeepsie. He said, "Man, you really killed that test." I said, "What happened?" He said, "The teacher checked it right while Russell was working. He said, you got straight A's on it. You got a straight A on it." But I'm bragging now, but whatever. That's part of the game, I guess.
That's quite all right. Okay, and then you enrolled in Drew.
Yeah, I went to Drew, and I got a church right away. They had an opening up in a little place called Pequag. And I got Pequag and Wickerby, and another church that I had to go across the mountain to get to. And I preached all 3 services every Sunday, and kept my work pretty well. I did my visitation, but I had to go back and forth to Drew. It was 90 miles to Drew from there, and I had to leave my wife and 2 babies every week from Monday to Thursday, which this is an aside that I've learned about. My wife had a tough job. She really did. I watched my granddaughters now taking care of their 2 children. And my one granddaughter, she works herself to death with those 2 babies. And when I took her up there and left her up on that mountain 8 months out of the year, she had a baby 4 and a baby 2. That's a lot of responsibility. Here I was having a ball down in Drew, and she was working herself to death. And when we got to the end of the Drew and 4 years at Poughkeepsie, this is really a sign. I got on my knees one night and I said, Lord, do me a favor. Help me to get back to Virginia so my wife will be happier. Well, we went down to Newport News. That's where I was from. We went to Grace Church. They were having a big deal, a big Christmas party. And one of the district superintendents walked up to me and he said, Al, how would you like to have a church in Newport News, Virginia this year? And I couldn't believe it. I know you're not supposed to ask the Lord for anything, but that was the answer to prayer, one of the biggest answers to prayer I've had. And my wife was ecstatic. I got a church 6 miles from where her mother lived and her brother. So you learn some of the things the hard way, really do. And Phil and her both died 3 months apart. He had pancreatic cancer, she had breast cancer off and on for 7 years. But when you look back on those years, you wonder how in the world did she put up with me? Somebody asked me, I've been married. She died at 85. Somebody asked me why I didn't get married. I said, man, there's no way I could find a woman put up with me, put up with what she did. There was no way in the world. But that's aside. What else? Am I running out of time?
Oh, we're doing well.
We're happy to stay as long as you're with us. We just don't want to. We don't.
Well, I'm throwing in some stuff.
Wear people out.
But, you know
No, that was our next question was, what did you do after graduation? And so you came back to Virginia,
Yeah.
and you served several churches here in Virginia.
Oh, I served.
And then you were a district superintendent as well.
Yeah. I was district superintendent. I went to Christ Church in Newport News, then I went to Kilmarnock, and then I went to Appomattox, and then I went to St. Stephen's in Burke, and another church. Whatever, it's slipping my mind again. I went to that before. What in the world was it? At that particular church, I stayed 6 years, and during that time, I was trying to involve the church in interracial things, which I had tried in Kilmarnock. It didn't. It worked out okay. We had groups of people. This is the stuff I picked up at Randolph-Macon. I got my conversion to race here at Randolph-Macon. We didn't have any racial people here, but we had a man come up and talk to us about race, and I had never heard in my mind anything important about race. I knew they were blacks. I knew the situations that they were in were bad. But, of course, when I was in Newport News as a kid, I was in the Depression. And we had some times, too, with my dad and mother and kids, too. But he preached, and I remember it was my first year here at Randolph-Macon. I was walking home, and I was literally almost crying till I got to the house. He converted me. And I was at this church. Oh, God, that's terrible. If they heard me say this, they'd kill me. I couldn't remember it. Can't remember the name of it. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, I'll get it. I started talking interracial with them. And about the 5th year, I asked them, I said, what would happen if y'all had a black pastor? How would you receive it? And I presented it to the pastoral parish relations. And they said, we just never have thought about it, but we don't think it would be out of reach at all. So the next year, we worked on that, and Godfrey Tate was appointed to our church that year. And as a result of it, of course, I had to leave, but they had a tremendous ministry up there for 5 years. And then they had another pastor. Some of the stories that came out of Godfrey's there was one of the little girls asked him one day, said, Pastor Tate, why are you so black? So he told her why he was black. Didn't take umbrage at it, and different stories came out where they had such a good deal. And now they've got a woman black pastor at that church. They moved me to St. Stephen's, and I did the same thing at St. Stephen's. And it was easy over there because most of the people were government workers and military. And it didn't bother them a bit. They got a black pastor, and he served there for quite a long time. Then they got a Cuban fellow. But these are some of the things I think, one of the things that I picked up here at this school when that guy preached. Why they had him up there, I'll never know. But over the years, it's been a little bit less difficult for me to deal with the black race on account of it.
How did you stay in touch with Randolph-Macon through the years?
Well, I really didn't get down here too much, really. When I was a district superintendent, I got some money. I got an inheritance or something, so it wasn't much, but I told him I'd try to give $2,000 a year to Randolph-Macon, but when I retired, I got such a cut in pay. I had a hard time dealing with it. So anyway, I wanted, after Dorothy and Philip died, I wanted something in memory of them. So anyway, I started giving some, the regular stuff, but I give it in memory of Dorothy B. Eastman and Philip L. Eastman, and memory of them. And now, I don't know the basis of it. I didn't have a whole lot of basic in it, but now it's worth about $10,000. But every now and then I think to myself, I was telling somebody down here one day, I was at that meeting that we had, it was such a small amount that I gave. I don't guess it really helped anybody, but this girl told me one time, she said, well, what they gave bought my books. So I felt pretty good about that. Mm-hmm. And every year that I've been giving, I get a note from whoever benefits from it, thanking me for it, which I think is pretty good business. But I did give a little bit more last year than I did, and I'm planning on it this year too. But I've got 2 disabled people in my house, not in my house, but one of my granddaughters has got. It's not a mental thing. What is it when you're crippled? I can't think of the word. What's the word? Muscular dystrophy.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And she gets around, and she went to high school and graduated from high school. Retarded. She's not retarded. She's mentally able. I think she'd have, but she's unable to work. Mm-hmm. She works for some company that deals with the children that are disabled. And she's got about 6 or 8 friends that are disabled out of the same school that she went to that are working there. So they take her in the bus over there and take her back. But her mother had a right rough time after Philip died. And she got into the booze a little bit, and she went to AA and got that cleared up. But after a while, she's really doing pretty well now by herself with the baby. She's not a baby anymore. She's 28 years old. But and then my sister lives in Newport News, and and she went through she retired from the hospital as a clerk, and but she weighs 325 pounds, and she's just disabled totally. And when I lived in Williamsburg for 13 years, I took care of her where she was living. Took her food, and groceries, took her out to eat, and all that kind of stuff, and I did that. And then, lo and behold, I had a heart attack while I was working in the yard. So my brother, who lives here in Williamsburg, he's 17 years younger than me. He decided that, well, since I had a heart attack, he'd start taking care of Carol. So he's been taking care of her for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years now, 2 years. And so I've got these two people that I have to give money to occasionally. And the other one, I take them out once a month and take out to dinner, and then I give them some money, $200 or $300, sometimes more than that when she gets in a bind. But aside from that, I'm doing pretty well. I'm not broke by any means. And so I have to take into consideration this kind of thing as well as what I give to Randolph-Macon. And so I don't know. It's just something that I have to deal with every year when I get billed.
Well, the thing that interested me about your scholarship is it's awarded to a female computer science.
No, not really. Dorothy she was a great hand worker. She had plenty of time to do that with the kids little and when they went to bed and all that stuff. When we went to Pequag, she started into making these rugs, these wool rugs with the threads. She took not my cashmere coat, but one of my coats, and tore it all to pieces, used it as the center part of the rug. And I was looking at that thing one day, and I said, "Where in the world is my camel hair coat?" There it is. But when she was up there, she was making those rugs, and those people were into rugs when we were there. And one of the ladies, Ms. Couple, she came over and looked at that rug, and she said, "Well, Dorothy, you beat us at our own work." But she did a lot of handiwork, made dresses for the girls in Kilmarnock that were getting married, and and then she crocheted, and she went over to the museum in Washington, D.C. and taught these women how to do this kind of stuff that she was doing, and she went to a black church and taught them how to crochet and all that kind of stuff. She was a real handy work. And Philip was into computers when it first started, and he just had a computer mind. He was doing it. He was going at it great, and he had a job. And he called me one day after he found out he had cancer of the pancreas, and he said, "I just got off of a job in California with the big boys." And he said, "I can't take it because I'm dying." So I thought to myself, well, I'd like to commemorate him some way, and that was the best way I could figure out for the time being. I don't know. But it didn't make any difference, really. I told whoever took the thing, computers, I knew everybody was into computers, because that would be certainly when anybody was doing it. And I said at the time, maybe if you got a young woman that wants to teach handiwork or something like that, you could, if you had courses like that, which I don't think they have, maybe you could put her online or something like that, but otherwise computers is okay. That was basically why I did it.
Did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to tell us about Randolph-Macon you think it was unique to you, or?
Well, it's unique to me when I went up to Poughkeepsie, Pequag, New York. I went to this house where this young woman, with this elderly, not just a woman. I don't want to put in the. She said, "I've always heard that Randolph-Macon was one of the best schools in the country." And I said, "Well, where did you hear that from?" So I thought to myself, well, I'm in pretty good shape here. But that was one of the things. I don't know. When you go to a good school, you go to Drew. Everybody from Duke told me that I was being a traitor. I should go to Duke, but I wasn't being a traitor. I was thinking of how I was going to live, and I could do it there. But when you got the background, it just gives you confidence of doing things that you never thought you would do. Where would I get the confidence to tell a church that I thought we ought to take a black minister? Tell me where would I have got it if I hadn't been here or Drew. And it worked out. It worked out 2 times. Of course, you got to watch what you say in the pulpit when you're talking about the women. You know, I was when they were having the women's lib. You know, when I was at St. Stephen's, I'll never forget it. I walked up to this little girl. She was about 5. And I said, "What are you doing, sweetie?" She said, "My name is not Sweetie, it's Barbara." So I said, "Well, that takes care of that." I got introduced to the women's lib at St. Ed Burke. Oh, man. But I feel like I was, I don't know why, but I guess maybe I just got so busy all the time, I just never did get back, to tell you the truth. I had the mental image of the things that were taught and the professors that did it. And in essence, I think the professors gave me a little leeway that I wouldn't have got in some schools. Reason is because I had a wife and 2 kids going into ministry. And I don't, not that they were easier, but there was a little bit of leeway in it. Because I graduated with a pretty high average. And most of my grades were A's, and boy, I would get 3 A's, a couple of B's throughout the whole thing. And that helped. Because I was dealing with some there were some good students here. Mm-hmm. Doug Lawson was a straight A student. And Dick Ferris was, I'm pretty sure Dick was pretty close to a straight A student. And these are the guys that I was knocking around with. Doug was he came from Grace Methodist Church where I came from. Doug was influenced by Pernell Bailey too. And Pernell influenced over 13 fellows coming. Kaufman, there was a Kaufman that came up here, and he was older than me, and he went into the ministry. His name was, and he was a fish. He sold fish in Newport News. Came to Randolph-Macon. Now he would have never gotten into Randolph-Macon. I don't know. Sometimes I think Randolph-Macon ought to look into taking a few C students every now and then, because Kaufman made a pretty good preacher. Mm-hmm. He did. And let's see.
Well, it does seem very fitting that our current preministerial students are the Bailey Scholars.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like a bunch of you were. Before we had Bailey Scholars, you were Bailey Scholars.
Yeah, well, I would say maybe there was about, I was counting the other day, about 9 or 13 continued to go into the ministry. But like I said, there was there was 90 guys up there going into the ministry that not a whole lot, not all of them went in, I'm sure. Some of that changed. Mm-hmm. And who was the professor that used to teach geology? Do you remember?
Schuyler Miller?
Yeah, Schuyler Miller. He was one of my favorite professors too. He loved giving pop quizzes. And I had him right after I had a break, and I'd go home and study it. I'll tell you, that was a tough course. Mm-hmm. And then this guy told me one day, he says, he was in that course, he said, "I'm going into medical." And he did. He went into the medical, and he called me up one day. He said, "Al, why don't you come up here and watch me deliver a baby?" I said, "You know, Mom, I have a feeling that I don't want to do that." But I believe if I'd have taken enough, if I'd have taken enough of the courses, I could have gone on down here to medical college. Because we had several fellows that went down there
We had a lot.
from here. And it's a good school to have as your pre-professional point. It really is. I bought a Ford while I was up here. I had a Ford and I traded it in, bought a Ford, and 54 Ford. Drove that thing, drove it to death. I hauled a whole trailer up behind it when I left college. I worked in the A&P. When first when I was a kid, I got 30 cents an hour. And when I was in the shipyard, we got 55 cents an hour. We got a big raise there.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated from the apprentice school pretty well. I was going to be a steam engineer, which was a machinist with his brain blown out.
That happened.
Huh?
That happened.
But after that, I went into the Navy and spent 3 great years there. If I hadn't been in love, I'd probably stayed there because I really liked the Navy. I came home and married Dorothy when she started going with her when she was 15. I didn't know it. She told me she was 16. So we had a birthday party, and she invited me to the party, and I said, how old are you, 17? She said, no, I'm 16. I said, you lied to me. But I knew that girl from the time she was 16 and the time I was 18 till 58. She was 58. And we had time together. But nobody stuck closer to a minister than her. I guarantee you that.
It takes a very special breed to be a minister's wife.
Yeah.
You were lucky.
Yeah. She was a strong individual in a lot of ways. She had cancer, and she never complained. I never heard her say, why did it happen to me? My son never complained. Maybe they should have complained. I don't know, but they endured it. And I hope when my time comes, and it'll probably be pretty soon because I'm 83 years old. I'll be 84 in August. And I've got the short end of the stick. I hope I can be as brave as they were. They never complained about it. And I've had prostate cancer. I've had heart trouble. I was in the doctor's office one time. I don't go to the doctor much. I've had a heart attack 3 years ago and haven't been to the doctor since. I take the same medicine they gave me then because I'm scared to go back. The one doctor I've got, she sees me once. Last time I saw her, she said, I haven't seen you in 2 years. But I know I should go back to these people, but I'm thinking, what the heck? But I really do hope that I can take it like they do when it comes. Because it takes a strong person to do it. And we thought she was clear 7 years. And when we became a district superintendent, it came back on her everywhere. It was all over in no time flat. And it was a terrible time. She died in Harrisonburg. And Philip died up in Fairfax. But that's the sad part you can keep out of this thing.
You mentioned your time in the Navy. Were you on the same ship the entire time?
2 years. It was my home. I was in Newport, Rhode Island. I served machinists. They put me on machines in Norfolk, and then I went up to Rhode Island, Newport, and they sent me to New Orleans to meet the ship in December of '44. And I was on it till April '46. And I served in the Pacific 2 years, almost 2 years of it. and had was Leyte Gulf. We had action. I landed troops. I was in one of the small boats. We landed troops there. I landed troops on my boat, and was an old airship. Was a cargo ship really. It was a Sabic, and we carried troops and cargo, and we took the cargo to Espiritu Santos with 125 Marines into the South Pacific with dogs. And from there on, we went up from there on up to Okinawa and back and forth and back and forth. And we landed troops in Leyte. We took troops into Okinawa, and we were in the big storm, big hurricane that they had there. And I had an easy war, really, compared to what these boys are going through in Vietnam and all those other places. We had, most of our trips were carrying troops and delivering them, carrying cargo and delivering them, and keeping the ship clean and all that stuff. But I was a machinist mate class, second class, before it was all over with, so I had some responsibility. And I was glad I was a veteran, really. I went in when I was 18, and so I was just a young kid then. We had Senator Dole said we had, a few years back, we had 3 million World War II veterans still living, and they were dying at the rate of $350,000 a year, or $350,000 a year. And I figured that up. Figured out it was going to be about 1912 before all of us were supposed to be dead. I mean, 2012 before all of us were going to be dead. Oh,
Yeah, we're losing all of you too soon, though. We need to hear all of your stories before.
Yeah, well, my stories were mostly, what is it the Prime Minister said? That war is 90% sweat, 10% blood. And mine was 90% sweat, because I learned it down in the engine room, running up forward flights down and up and down in 120 degree, 110 degree heat. But you're young, you don't have the sense. You don't think you're going to get killed. We were down in the boiler room, and they were firing bullets. They were firing the big guns up on the deck, and a bomb dropped right beside the ship and put a solid dent in the thing. What do you think? Nothing was going to happen to us. That's the Army's. I've always said the Army is getting too old, really, because you got all these guys with wives and children. They have a terrible time fighting. They really do. And I'm not taking anything away from them. When you're 18 and 19 and 20, you can fight, and I don't think these guys that are 30 years old, they know they're going to get killed, or they can get killed. And I think that's a difference in the wars we fight. And of course, we're not allowed to win any of them. Korea, we lost that. We didn't lose it, but we fought to a draw. Vietnam, we lost that one. And I don't know what we've done with this one. We haven't. We're somewhere in it, but I don't know where we are.
Now, you were with your calling to preach. Was that a very sudden thing, or had it come on over a great?
No, it came. I was teaching.
Because that's why you came here.
I was teaching Sunday school, and I got used to. I used to have fairly good crowds coming to this thing, and I got kind of egoistic about it. Decided I ought to go into ministry. But anyway, I felt a definite call to go, really. I felt it definite in one of the churches at King William. What's the little church down now on the main road? There's Epworth and this.
Epworth, let's see, McHenry's not on the main road. That's a little close to
There's another brick church down there with a field.
The only one I'm thinking of, the two I'm thinking of are both Baptists. They're not.
No, this was
So I'm trying to
it's a
think
brick
what it
church.
was.
Well, anyway,
Epworth and McKendree are the ones I know.
yeah, McKendree and Epworth, and there's one down in the woods, really. What's the other one? I can't remember it. I'll probably remember when I go home. But it was at that church I was preaching, and I'm telling you, I really felt the call to go. And after it was all over, this old farmer came up to me and said, "Man, I saw God standing up there beside you." And I cried all the way home. I was torn to pieces for about a week. And that confirmed it for me at that particular moment when that old guy told me that. Because the church was just listening. It was a revival thing. And it wasn't a big church. It's not a big church, but it was full. And it was just something that clicked. And you can't escape it when it clicks. I don't care. And as I was telling the minister recently, I said, I really didn't have any choice where I was going or what I was doing for 32 years. I just went. And I felt that Dorothy went too, but in a different way. And Philip, that rascal, he got into more trouble because he was a preacher's son, I guess, because most preacher's sons are pretty good. But he was miserable sometimes. But you know what he told me the night before he died? Boy, Dorothy had died 2 months before that. He said, "Dad, have you got any messages for Mom?" Boy, that ripped me.
Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing with us today.
Okay. Well, I'm glad
We
to-
learned a great deal.
Well, I hope so, because I get a tendency to enjoy talking. I don't get to talk to many people, but I got 2 great grandbabies, 3 now, and one of them is Kayla, and one of them is Madeline, and the other one's Alexis. And Kayla is a little character. I think she is. I think you ever heard of an old soul?
Mm-hmm.
I think she's got an old soul. She says some of the things that just don't make any sense for a 3-year-old or 2-year-old to say. It's too old. It's some things that she says that just startled me. And of course the other one, she's just 1 year old. She's gonna be 1 next month. And she has a way of looking at you. Have you ever, the baby stare? Have you ever heard of the baby stare?
Mm-hmm.
They just stare at you. Madeline gives me the stare. She makes me feel guilty. I look around, what have I done? and I christened Madeline, and I christened the Alexis, the other little girl, and she slept through the whole thing. Now her mother screamed through the whole thing. Well, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come, to tell you the truth. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.